Well, Chuck and I spent quite a bit of time working on not this particular aspect of the project, but we did start on it a while ago. And so what we put together for this presentation is not exactly chronological, but overall it covers the whole picture. So this is about the historical markers, which I know the words have been floating around in town. People say, what are they? And we're going to explain it to you. But one of the first questions usually is, well, what places are you going to mark? So we're going to start right off with, oops, I don't know how to turn the page on. The list. Okay. These are the places that we decided we were going to have historical markers for. I find it rather interesting that the first 5 of them all began with a C. And I have funny reasons for why I pick up patterns in that, but those are the first 5. Those are buildings that still exist and that have a reasonable history, some of which might only be, 60 years or something like that. Some of them are more than 100 years old.
So C.
Right, sounds like you're saying something else in Spanish. Now, the Red Atlantic Railroad, obviously there's no physical structure for it anymore, but it was a significant entity in town, and we just couldn't pass up the subject. Now, that doesn't mean this is all there is to talk about in Newberg. There's a lot more, but this was our first crack at it.
Well, my mother said that they used to board the railroad out of chapters.
Yes. Or across the street from Chapel, but I can't answer that question for sure. So how did all of this begin? Well, first of all, this is the Newberg Historical Society. It is not the first one, I know that. There might have been 2 prior to this current organization. But this organization's history goes back about 10 years. They were all volunteers, and there was certainly a group of people there who were very interested in recognizing the historic structures in town. They did a lot of talking, and I love that expression. You talk the talk, but my gosh, you should walk the walk. Well, those earlier people, they did a lot of talking and no walking. And I can't be sure exactly what year Rachel came on as the president. I think maybe 3 years ago. And
Last year.
oh, it can't be, because I'm on my 2nd year, and she invited me to join the board. And it was because of Rachel that I did. And the 2 of us talked a bit about what to do, and we came back to the recognizing some of the historical structures in town. And then, well, how do you go about this? And I don't know where or who brought up the name Silverton, but it's not that far away from here. And approximately a year ago, 4 or 5 of us piled into Rachel's car, and we went down to Silverton to see what they had. We were graciously entertained by the Historical Society there. They showed us the project, they took us around town, and we came home and we were rather gunned up about, let's do something now. Well, as I said, that was about a year ago, so that was March. We spent a couple of months just chatting about what we might do. And by the time the summer came around, we were pretty sure we wanted to get into a real recognition of these sites kind of a program. Well, the problem was Rachel. She is the archivist at the university. She, at that time, this is the summertime, she knew what her program was going to be for the fall, and she's going to be teaching 2 classes. She has a family living in town with 2 very young children, and a lot of organizations in town said, hey, we want Rachel on our board. We want some representative from the Historical Society. No, we don't want Brenda, we don't want Barbara, we don't want Chuck, we want Rachel. Well, this woman was being pulled like this. So Chuck and I sorry for her and said, well, I think we could work together and maybe do something. So we said we'd give it a try. And so that started pretty much in the early fall of 2018. And here we are. Still friends, still shaking hands, and we don't expect it to end when this project ends. So, moving on, let's see, pass this one. Let's go to the picture of the site. You go past that one? Okay, this is what, oh, not the friends, the next one. This is what we saw in Silverton, and this picture does definitely not do it justice. It looks like it's on a rug. No, it's not. This dark stuff is a green field because that marker there recognizes a building and an industry is just completely gone. So this concrete plaque or slab is in the ground with grass around it, and this pedestal stands up about 3 feet high. There's a plate underneath it that's like this with a nice fancy plaque over it. And, well, I thought, Chuck and I thought I had a picture. So I put this all together, and then I said, this is not the right size because that plaque is 16 by 16 square. This is not a square. So I simply cut out a piece of paper that was a 16-inch square, and this is sort of what it will look like with the right things on. There'll be a nice image of the site. There'll be text down here. There will be some information depending upon the picture as to whether it's here or here. We'll tell you what the building is and the relevant time for it. And down at the bottom will be our new logo, relatively new logo. And over here will be the name or names of the people or organizations that put up the money for it. So let's move on to the next screen. This is what we liked in Silverton. Now, what do we have to do? And we came up with a lot of questions. First one, well, where do you get the money for it? How does the city get involved? Because it's going to be on their land. What are the sites? We didn't have that list of 6 at that time. We just said, oh, let's do 8. We could pick the number out of the air. Who will produce all these things? Well, we'll have to figure that one out. Who will install them? Not us, the city. Who will maintain them? We're a volunteer organization. People come and go. The city's got to maintain them. So we answered a few easy questions, and then we went on to more of the involved things. Now, knowing that we needed money, it was like, well, what should we figure out first? So I sort of said, well, we need to have a pedestal, we need a plaque, we need a few things. And I started asking around in some of the vendors in town what things would cost. And I added it up, and it was a little over $1,000. And it was like, that was a big gulp. We couldn't possibly pay for that. But I have to confess, I've spent a lot of years working with historical societies and museums. And they are traditionally underfunded for the projects they would like to take on, so what do? They write grant applications and hope there's some funder out there that will put up some money. And the Fields Fund of Oregon Community Foundation gave us $1,500. That was just a nice big written report to them. The Newberg Early Bird Rotary Foundation, well, I have to say, I took advantage of contacts. My husband's a Rotarian. I know most of the people there. I know the people on the foundation. And so that $2,000 wasn't too hard to get. Now, the $1,000 here, well, this is what Rachel did. See, Rachel has the time to get onto the email and the telephone and talk to people. And she struck up a good deal with Joe Hannon, who's the city manager. And he said, yeah, the city could come up with $1,000. So we got $4,500, but that's still not $1,000 for each. And we already cut back from 8 to 6 items, so we're still a bit short money-wise, and we're trying to figure out how to do things. So let's go on to what else happened in here. Yes, this one right in here, that's very important. When we were in Silverton, entertained by the Historical Society there, and the man who designed that historical marker. And he said, oh, well, we have a welding class at the high school, and our students made the pedestal. So we're short money, and I'm thinking about all the things I heard. So I said, well, maybe we have it here. Well, when you're in the middle of August and you want to know something about the school district, that's pretty hard because nobody's around. But with enough persistence, I got the name of the man who teaches the welding class. His name is Matthew Miller, and he likes to be called Matt. And I finally got in touch with him, and we agreed to have coffee at Chapters. He was very gentlemanly about it, and he agreed to meet and have coffee, and he didn't seem very interested. And by the time the coffee was gone and the conversation was over, he was in it 100%. He said, I will get you a diagram for this in 2 days, and I will give you an estimated cost for it in 2 days, and we're off and running. That was wonderful. The city agreed to the $1,000, which Joe said they would give us, but it's like, you know, in the hand is worth a lot more than some good words. The city agreed to install these things. I mean, how are we going to put a chunk of concrete in the ground and put a metal pedestal in it? We needed equipment. So Rachel and I talked to Russ Thomas. He thought the idea was great. And he said, oh yeah, and I know just the time of year we should do this, and blah, 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 blah. So everything was going along very well. And somehow or other we came down to $550 approximately as the cost, but I still think it could fluctuate some. Chuck would like me to see, he was the engineer, he was in charge of a job, and you had to have a dollar sign, right? Definitely, and I, well, we'll figure this out as we go along, type thing. At any rate, this is pretty much where we are right now. I went to the city council, they seem to like it. Joe likes it, Russ Thomas likes it, and the city agreed to install it, maintain it on one condition. When they're put in, we give them to the city. We didn't think that was a bad deal at all. Okay? Go back one. This is two pictures of the welding students, two different students, obviously one's red, one's blue colors. And these are the pedestals that they're making. You can see it right here. And obviously they're creating some pretty good sparks there. And let's go to the next picture. And here they are. They're all made. 6 of them. These are the bases. This is the top where the fancy plaque will go on. And
we had to rotate the picture, right. So there's a car right there, but it's on the side.
Well, I got it, and it was rotated 90 degrees, and I said, what is he sending me a picture of a stairway for? And after a while, I recognized, you know, these little extra pieces here and there. Now, this isn't right. So if I turned it 90 degrees, he had to turn it 90 degrees. So I can tell you where they are. The pedestals are all made. It's out of steel. Well, steel will rust. So right now, these 6 pedestals are at a company in Portland that does powder coating, which will put a protective coating on this so that they will not rust. And when they come back, the school district said, not the school district, the city people said, never mind, we'll just pick them up and store them until it's needed. And then Chuck came along with an even better idea from the next group of people, and I think that's all I've got to say, and now you're going to talk? Yes, he's going to talk. We decided to take turns.
So the 6 sites that we selected, and the finished plaques will have the expanded text on it that Barbara has explained. Cameo Theater, and we tried to find historical pictures that will eventually be laser printed on metal, and then the plastic covering over acrylic covering over the top will be done at Columbia Laser. So this was, I got in touch with Ted at the theater, and he said that this is one of the pictures he sent me. There's several pictures that we have of that, but anyway, the building itself was erected in 1937. It's the oldest continually operating Newberg family business. And Ed Francis, and then Brian is the current owner. Cameo Beauty Shop used to be in the Cameo Fountain, and was there for about 20 years, and then they converted that area to the current fountain. City Hall, this was an old picture of the City Hall, and that's, I think this will be the one that will be on the plaque.
What year was that built?
1913. Actually, there was another building there that had, actually, the fire department occupied the major part of it, and the council met in a little shed kind of behind the fire hall. But it's interesting how many of these facilities have suffered either fire or earthquake and have been replaced, and the fire department burnt down in 1912. And in the future, one of my dreams, and Barbara and I have these discussions, but we've got some good pictures of the old firehouse and on that site, and down the street from that is the
Palace.
It's a meat market, Palace Meat Market, and we've got a picture that has that in the old fire hall, but also one that has the city hall, and that is also down the street from it. So that was there for, I don't know, I'm trying to sort out, but I think it's where the Bun Building is now. So the current building was built in 1913, and again used brick that was made here in town. The library, Carnegie funded a lot of libraries around the country. And several years ago, we had someone here that gave us a history of Carnegie. You remember? I don't even remember who it was, but he told the whole history from the beginning and how he got interested in libraries. And this is one of, 20 that are in the state, I believe.
Oh, I think there's only about 11 or 12, something like that. That still function as libraries.
Yeah. There are other buildings that are still standing, but they've been put to different use. So, in 1910, they received the $10,000 grant from Carnegie. Local builder was contracted, and again, the bricks came from a local brickyard in 1912, and it was opened in 1913. So, City Hall, library, basically the same years. Barbara knows more about this one than I do. She's written a book on it. But it was the original grade school, 4 classrooms, and then 4 more were added. And eventually, the building was declared a fire trap, but they continued to use it for 2 more years.
Well, there just wasn't any money to build another one.
And then, this one was built, they got another grant. I don't know if Barbara wrote that or not. And then the city floated a bond issue to build the current building.
This one.
And however, in 1993, after the earthquake, it was declared not safe to be in. But again, they must have used it for a couple more years. They never, the other school, the main school was 1935.
Well, this
Or-
closed as a place for classes and kids in 1995. So it functioned for almost 60 years as the elementary school. And as long as there wasn't any other school around, it didn't have to have a name. It was the school. And so the name Central came on at a later date. Well, someplace in the 30s.
Original building on the same site.
Yes, when that building that was called a fire trap was actually taken down. I mean, this is the depth of depression. There wasn't money to do things. And the literature I read said that if this school were in some other states, children would not have been allowed back in for the next year, but there was no other option. So if the city would put up a bond for $35,000 to pay for the material, the federal government on one of those WPA or PWA, whatever it is, the government would give out $15,000, which would pay the salary for the people who did the work. What that meant, well, okay, we can get the building and we can get the labor, but where do we put it? We need land, and the only answer was take the old building down in the beginning of 1935, and by October of 1935, this building was standing.
Wow.
So when would this floor have been poured?
35. I would guess, I don't know, they didn't say anything about the floor in particular.
I ate lunch on this floor for 6 years.
Yeah, me too. I went to school here too.
The entrance to it was on the second level.
We've got a lot of present people that have ties to this building.
Yeah.
Chapters, the oldest commercial building in town, and we wanted to pick this picture because it's kind of out in the middle, but we've got another one that doesn't have as many people in it that we'll probably use on the plaque. But it gives you some idea of the isolation or where someone had a vision, we're going to put a store right here, and it's still standing. And 1891 was erected. It's changed many hands, many times over the years, and it's vacillated mainly between hardware stores and bookstores. So this fact here, the fact that the district superintendent actually left his position to manage a hardware store. Higher ground bookstore and candy store, and somewhere in there they built a wall down the middle. And then when the Rogers took it over as chapters, they took that wall out again, and so it has flip-flopped back and forth. And we were instrumental, the Historical Preservation Commission, in assisting getting money to do the front of it and make the two entrances. And I think, Brian, you were very much involved in that project.
Yeah, I did engineering. Matthew Powell drew it up and actually was the contractor who did the work, but I did engineering to figure out how to make it look like, because the original building had this huge, brick front. Well, it looks like it has a brick front now, but it's a brick facade. It looks just like, that brick is heavy. So there was a huge, big wood beam across there when it was first built. Well, water leaks in, and at some point, this is my speculation, that wood beam rotted, and the whole front probably fell down or was about to fall down. So when they fixed it up again, the whole brick up top disappeared and just became stucco facade, which is what we had until 2 years ago. So when we put it back, we had to figure out how do we put the brick back up there, and the challenge is the code today says, if you're gonna fix up a building, you can't make it any weaker than it was when it started. Well, put a lot of weight up there, that's not bad news for an earthquake. And so I had to come up with a design that didn't weigh any more than the stucco did. So it's all framed wood, but they did a nice job with very thin brick to make it look just like the original. And it is stronger. I mean, we've got a fairly serious beam across there, so the two sides are tied together, and we had to kind of rebuild the sidewalls because they were kind of chewed up when that center, the top collapsed and the edges of the brick were all ragged. Came out very well.
Yeah.
But I would just add something here, and Chuck and I agreed we would interrupt each other and not feel offended by it. But both of us are on the Historic Preservation Commission, and the Cameo Theater was recently approved for getting on the National Register of Historic Places. But this building can't because the facade has been changed. It looks a lot like what it was, but it's not what it was.
Then the red electric, and that's something I've been very interested in. Actually, this picture just showed, well, you only see one track, but there was one time 2 railroad tracks went right down First Street. And the train would come from Portland, come down Meridian, make a turn on First, and then join the tracks again at the other end of town. And it functioned until 1929. It was one of the shortest serving electric lines. There were others that persisted longer and went further south, and this one used to go all the way to McMinnville, and there was another one that went around to Forest Grove, and they met at St. Joseph's. And there's that was St. Joseph's was quite, must have been a thriving site, because I believe that the steamboats used to come up the river, go through the Amhill locks, and go all the way to St. Joseph, and farmers would load their grain on there. So, been a lot of things happening, and I've heard that Russ Thomas tells me that tracks are still under the pavement here, and they claim they have some pictures of it, and I want to get a hold of those pictures, because someday I'll do a presentation here on the red electric, because it intrigues me. But anyway, it was one of the facilities here in town that we can't show a good picture of that exists today, but someday.
It'd be like that picture that we saw at Silverton. The first thing that we saw was a reminder of what had been there. And that's what
Yeah.
the red electric thing is all
Yeah,
about.
so that's what we're kind of featuring. So,
Okay. All right. Well, obviously, we have to let people know where these sites are. Now, you could go and find the Cameo Theater is on First Street here, and City Hall is here. But the point is, where are these markers going to be? And the big part about getting this whole thing going was, yeah, we could name sites that we wanted to have included in this, but we had to find good pictures. Now, they didn't have to be ours, but they had to be good pictures. And the idea was, if we can get a good picture of a site that we liked, and I stepped forward and volunteered to do this, do the research, and write the little story about the thing. Then we want to put the marker where the person stood who took that picture in the past. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting, because a few of them we should have been standing in the middle of Hancock Street. Not recommended, and it's not surprising that Russ Thomas, no, we are not putting them on there. We're going to have to find some other site. So what you see here are locations of where the markers are. And the red electric which went right down on First Street, obviously, we can't put it there. So it's pretty much right on the curb where the Chapters building meets the Jeweler's building next to it. Just walk out to the curb, and that's where the marker should be. Okay. And, well, we have to, you have to have a concrete pad there to put the pedestal in. And I guess we hadn't really thought about the necessary details for this, because when we went out with Russ Thomas to locate, yes, we'll put it here and we'll put it there. And I'm thinking in terms of, if you drill holes in the city cement, you might hit a water main or an electric line or who knows what. And he said, no, the most important thing is the ADA requirements. So that's why you have this information here, and the pedestals are just high enough so that if somebody came along in a wheelchair, they could sit there and read it. And it wouldn't be blocking traffic and so forth. So all this other stuff worked out very nicely in here, except when Russ was telling us about putting the concrete down, and we had sort of come up with an idea that probably we would like to have these in by the beginning of May. And then Russ said something about, concrete has to cure. Russ, what do you mean by cure it? Well, it has to harden for 30 days. And it's like, well, that's a shot on schedule. So we don't exactly know when these things will be dedicated, because we have to let the...
That's the operative word.
Cure, right.
Tentative.
Right. And what else do we have to say? Anything else here?
No.
Good. Okay, well, this was the city installing them, although they're not installed. Historical markers there.
Best thing we could get off the internet.
And then we would like to just thank the various people and organizations. Brandon Wainwright is an art professor at George Fox, and he came up with the idea. And that's it, folks. It's going to look a lot better than that. But this is a 16-inch square, and the top will be the image, and the text will be in 2 columns, like newspaper print. And the name of the building and whatever the appropriate date is will either be here or there as it fits into the picture. And then at the bottom below the text will be the Historical Society logo, and over here, whoever put up the money. And we had this lovely picture, and Chuck said to me, well, can you print that out and bring it? And I did all that, and I looked at this at home, and I said, that's not a 16-inch square. So